Oh, maybe you can. I don't think you can do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might have to put down a different background so they don't see me cooking.
How do I get this to work?
Right here. Oh, okay. So
How do I put a background?
go over here, the arrow, and go choose virtual background. Second. Oh, there it goes. Oh, really? What's this? Really? Usually you can do a video.
Don't worry about it. I don't need a virtual background. Just don't cook while I'm in
Don't
here.
see me.
Let's just hang out because we all worked on this.
I haven't really touched it at all. A beautiful kitchen in Canada.
I got a question.
Huh?
How come Danya can't just get rid of this unit and make this open space and have 4 townhomes? We could, right? And then we don't have to have the ADA thing. Is it 4 you need ADA or 5? Do you remember?
An ADA unit?
Yeah. ADA unit.
It's in chapter 11A, CBC. And it goes to application, which, yeah. And so let's see, multi.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Gals.
Good evening.
Hello, planning commissioners.
Hey, Paul. So we're waiting for Commissioners Ching and Bookbinder, I believe. Oh, there's Commissioner Ching.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Hanging in there. We're all hanging in.
So, all in our pens.
Oh, boy.
Mike, can you hear me? I'm Dale Sweezy.
Yes, yes, I can.
Can you see me?
No.
For some reason I can't. Maybe that'll work. Well, at least I can hear you.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'm having computer problems tonight. One of those fun things.
Hello, good evening.
Oh, there we go. Commissioner
I think
Bookbinder.
I'm there.
We've got somebody sharing the screen. I don't know if you want to do that quite yet.
Is that me you're talking to?
Yes, Ray, that's you. If you can, yeah, there we go.
Okay. Well, I think we're all here. Corinne, you're ready?
Ready.
Okay, so I think we're all ready. So let's call to order the December 8th meeting of the Campbell, California Planning Commission. This Planning Commission meeting will be conducted via telecommunication and is compliant with provisions of the Brown Act and Executive Order N-29-20 issued by the governor. And Corinne, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Bookbinder,
Present.
King,
Here.
Colville,
Present.
Rivlin,
Present.
Zisser,
Present.
Vice Chair Ostrowski,
Here.
Chair Cray,
Here.
all present.
So everybody is here and we got a full house, so that's good. And has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes of our last meeting, November 24th? Any corrections or?
I was requested to make them at the meeting as opposed to over email. I have two. First, on page 11 of the draft minutes, the article in City Observatory was the illegal city of Somerville. It's written down as Summerfield. It should be Somerville, Somerville. And on page 14 of the draft notes, it says that I pointed out that NOCA is a lot larger than 3 acres and has more than 20 units. At that point, the YouTube link to the timestamp, but I was intending to, and it seems that I was asking if there existed within NOCA any individual lot with area over 3 acres, bar greater than 1, or density over 20 units per acre. The intent being to see if the update would make any existing development non-conforming. And that's what I wanted to address in the minutes. That's on pages 11 and 14.
Okay, any other changes or any motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those adjustments from Commissioner Bookbinder.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Bookbinder. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
And anybody abstain? So that the minutes passed unanimously. Director Crimoy, is there any communications for the commission or any agenda changes or modifications?
So there was one communication, Mr. Chair, that was sent to you via email. Is for item number 2, and there are no agenda modifications.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is the time of the meeting where anybody can speak on an item that's not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes. I don't see anybody out there, but if there is anybody, this is the time for any item not on the agenda. Anybody out there? Okay, going once, going twice, so that is closed. At this point, we'll move to our regular agenda. And our first item is PLN 2020-133. Item number 1, it's a public hearing to consider the application, PLN 2020-7 of Viati Architects for a site and architectural review permit to allow construction of an approximately 8,200 square foot industrial building, a parking modification permit to allow a reduction in the number of required parking stalls, a variance to allow a 0 side setback, and a tree removal permit to allow removal of on-site protected trees on property located at 930 Dell Avenue. Staff is recommending that this item be deemed categorically exempt under CEQA Planning Commission action final unless appealed in writing to the city clerk within 10 calendar days. And our project planner is Daniel Fama. Daniel.
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, share my screen. All right, so this is an application for 930 Dell Avenue encompassing a site architectural review permit, a variance, a parking modification permit, and tree removal permit to allow construction of an approximately 8,300 square foot industrial building. The project site is a 30,000 square foot vacant lot that's unusually narrow and long, located along Dell Avenue, south of the Santa Monica Expressway overpass within the M1 Light Industrial Zoning District. This is a vacant remnant parcel that was created in the late 1960s when the Santa Monica Expressway was created and split a much larger parcel with the majority of the land to the north on the other side of the expressway. Here we have the proposed site plan. You see the 8,300 square foot building here. It's primarily a single level building with a component as a second upper level mezzanine. The proposed use in the applicant is a custom stair manufacturer. The variance is for a 0 side setback that would allow the building to be placed along the property line at the north side. This is in response to the unusual geometry of this property being so narrow and long. It's necessary to allow a usable building as well as to provide sufficient clearance for a two-way drive aisle for both vehicles and emergency access vehicles. Small parking lot would be shown here in the front with 7 stalls and the additional 9 stalls located at the rear back here. The furthest portion of the site would remain undeveloped and simply landscaped because it's so narrow. This does include a parking modification request to allow reduction in stalls from 20 that would normally be required down to 16. This is a similar request as the recently approved industrial building on Florence Similar to that, land uses can also be restricted to industrial uses that are commensurate with the parking supply. In terms of architectural appearance, the proposal does show a combination of materials to create a contemporary architectural design, incorporating reclaimed horizontal wood siding, standing seam, metal roofing, stucco cladding, steel accents, and dark bronze steel storefront system. However, due to fire code requirements, the north side wall that is along the property line would have to be CMU block. However, that would be treated with anti-graffiti paint, and I'll discuss a little later. It would also be screened with landscaping on the adjacent county property. For similar reasons as the variance request, the project would also incorporate removal of 14 protected trees. These trees are largely located along the edge of the property lines, and they would impair the property's ability to incorporate both the building and the drive aisle, and retention would effectively render the property undevelopable. However, per feedback from the Site Architecture Review Committee, the applicant or the property owner did indicate that he does have a desire to preserve trees number 2, 3, and 4, since they do screen the offsite storage facility located to the south. The site, of course, would be fully landscaped, including new trees within the front area along the rear, with separate agreement with the County Roads and Airport Department. The applicant will also be able to install trees on the other side of the property line along this edge as seen from the expressway. This will have the benefit of screening that blank wall from public view from the expressway ramp. The county has indicated they are agreeable to that type of landscaping, subject to a separate agreement between the property owner and the county. In conclusion, staff does recommend that the Plan Commission adopt the resolution approving a site and architectural review permit, variance, and parking modification permit, and a separate resolution approving the tree removal permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel? I got a couple quick questions, Daniel. Is the anti-graffiti paint, have we used that before, and is that actually effective?
I know we have used it before. I'm not sure to what extent it's effective. I mean, hopefully the need for it to be effective would be more in the short term until the vegetation grows in.
I can have something to say about that. I used to do the art boxes, the utility art boxes, and we investigated anti-graffiti paint that we used. So I got a little bit of sense of, we use it for on small structures, but they do use a spray on for, like something on the side of a building. It doesn't keep the graffiti from being put on it. All it does is it allows it to be more easily removed. Just so everybody knows, it's like somebody could go in there and graffiti across the, and then in theory, when you go in, it makes it easy for you to go in and remove it rather than having to like paint over it. So it's useful. It has a, if every time it gets graffitied, it's more likely that once they go in and remove the graffiti, they'll have to respray it. It doesn't hold up. It holds up a certain amount depending on how much they put on, but that's what it's intended to do, is make it easier to remove graffiti. So if we have concerns about access to that side of the building with regards to graffiti that will be seen by the, like from the highway, it's certainly something good to do. It's just not going to keep somebody from putting up graffiti. I have a question about, there's a little bit of fencing there that I assume is the county fencing. Is that fencing going to be removed so that it'll just be the building as the barrier?
Yes, I believe so. Because the building will be at the property line.
Daniel, just to make sure, so the tree replacement is 1-for-1. We're getting as many trees as we're losing. Correct, as conditioned, and that does include the offsite trees. And just to make sure we're correct, but I noticed in one of the applicant's letters they referred to 24 parking spots required. And I know in your report we said 20. I assume 20 is is the correct number.
Correct. That's 1 per 400. They were doing a little more of a complicated analysis than we would normally do.
Okay, all right, now, thanks. Any other questions for Daniel?
I had a question. I think there was somewhere in there about planting of the trees over some fairly long period of time, like 5 years. Is that, I'm not quite sure where that is, but I seem to remember that they were going to allow for the landscaping to be put in over some period of time.
Well, landscaping generally needs to be installed at the time of construction, is really the last thing that we check for. I mean, maybe it obviously takes time for these trees to grow in, but they would need to be installed at that point.
Okay, maybe I misread that.
I think there was a SARC, I think SARC looked at this item, so is there a SARC report on this item?
Yeah, so we were very supportive of the project. It was a textbook example of the use of a variance with that very oddly shaped lot. And yeah, very nice design by the architect, so fully supported.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ostrowski. If there's no more questions, then I guess we can open up the public hearing. And I know the applicant would like to speak, or the representative. So public hearing is now open. It's all yours.
Hi, my name's Ray Viotti. I'm the architect of the project. I'm here just to answer any questions that you guys might have. Like Daniel said, it's a tough, long, narrow lot. We need a lot of space for the fabrication area in the back. So that's why we had to put the building off to one side to allow for the parking and for fire access to the back of the building. And as Daniel said, I think early on in this project, when I first met with Daniel, we did go over to the airport and airport and city and talk to them regarding the planting, and they are definitely amenable to the planting on their property.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to talk on this item? Any questions for the architect?
Yeah, well, I guess the question I have is, you're taking from commissioners?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so the question with regards to the agreement with the county, is there assumption we would get that agreement in place at some time or soon after we give approval? I mean, yes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Dale Sweezy. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
I'm the owner. I just wanted to comment that the trees 2 through 8 I would want to save. It shows an X on them, but I don't want to remove those trees. They're substantially good sized pepper trees, and I like those. And that kind of blocks off the view of the other building on the other side. And in the front, it specs out, I believe, 24-inch boxes or 18-inch trees in the front. I'm going to put 36 inches. I like substantially larger trees, in my opinion. I consider time's not on my side, so I want to enjoy them while I'm still around instead of waiting for 5 or 10 years. So, and the trees along the building site, half of them are already dead. So we're removing most of those, but we're replacing those with live trees.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other speakers on item number 1?
I do have one question for staff, if we can do that. I do apologize for doing this in the wrong order. What's the way that the parking requirement is calculated, that we would need 24 spaces for this? It seems like a lot more than the applicant says that they would need.
Well, we looked at it just in the simpler way that it's an industrial building in an industrial zone. So we applied the industrial standard of 1 stall per 400 square feet. But, as we discussed in the staff report and as well as that recent Florence project, the city standards are rather high. And that was somewhat part in design. It does provide some greater leverage on the city's part when an applicant's requesting a reduction in parking, to use that as leverage to gain other exactions or improvements to a project, which is sometimes necessary. In this particular case, that's not really the purpose of the parking modification permit. We're simply recognizing that they're asking for less parking, but also using the parking modification permit as a mechanism to really restrict the use of this building to industrial activities. So primarily warehousing, manufacturing, assembly, because in the light industrial zoning district, you could actually have an office use as a permitted use. So there are some uses that you wouldn't necessarily think are appropriate in the industrial area. And so those are the types of uses that could create future parking impacts. So through this mechanism, we can ensure that it's parked a little less, but solely for industrial purposes.
That's a very thorough answer. Thank you for that. Just to clear this up, you say 1 per 400 feet. That's 1 per 400 square feet of building size, not lot size?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That explains.
Sure.
You know, on that point, I'd say it was interesting in your report, Daniel, that you did put in the why the city standards are higher baseline than the ITE standards, and I hadn't seen it written so nicely before, but that was actually pretty helpful. Explained that pretty well. Any other questions for any of the speakers, the applicant or the architect? Any other speakers on item 1? If not, we'll just close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Anybody want to start us off?
I'll just say that I think it's really cool that we're finding a use for this really inconveniently shaped lot. If you'd shown me a drawing of it, I would not have thought this was a lot. I think it's really great that somebody's going to go there and do business and contribute to our city. The building additionally looks rather lovely in the drawings. I have no complaints about the design, and the parking variance sounds reasonable to me given the odd shape of the lot and how stable the use is.
Thank you. I would just second that. I think the parking modification is fine here, and then with the weird location of that lot, the 0 setback is really no issue there. The only issue I have, I'm glad that the trees will be planted on the county property there to hide that wall, because that could be a graffiti targeted type of wall, because some cars are driving by there. And I saw that one fence already had some graffiti on it, so I'm glad that we'll have the trees there, and I think that will take care of that problem. So.
Yeah, a comment we had in SARC, and I think the applicant is agreeable to this, and especially given the reduced parking variance, if there could be a secure storage or bike rack for employees to be installed. I believe in the notes, and the applicant was happy to do that, but I think just generally a good bike rack or location would be worth installing. And I think that they're putting a shower in there as well. And especially given the proximity to the Los Gatos Creek Trail, which isn't far away. But otherwise, I think it's really good.
Anybody else, or should we try a motion, anybody, or?
Given what Commissioner Ching just mentioned, is there any bike parking in there? Or like bike infrastructure available?
Sorry, Adam, I don't think I didn't hear you there.
Sorry, I'm having network connectivity issues here. I may reconnect from my phone in a minute. I was asking if I didn't see any bike infrastructure or bike parking included.
I don't remember seeing any on the plans, but I think we raised it at SARC, and I think the applicant was happy to put the a bike rack or storage or something for employees there.
Do we need to make that a requirement in the finding, add a finding to that, Daniel, or are we okay on that, you think?
Well, just to clarify, you could add a condition in the motion.
I think that's a good idea.
And would we also, this is Commissioner Rivlin, would we want to include a requirement for a shower?
Ray, if you could help me out, does the California Green Building Code require a shower for this type of building?
It doesn't, but if I remember correctly, I think I've already got one slated for here. Let me check my drawings.
It's a little out of order, but I do see something in essentially in the further east bathroom that appears to be a shower.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I put one in.
Well, I guess we could make that also a condition in the motion if we wanted to. Sounds good to me, but
It does appear to be a shower.
Yeah, there is one in there. So there's a shower in one of the bathrooms off of the shop area in the back.
Yeah, and that's a unisex bathroom.
Correct.
should we try a motion, anybody then, or any other issues?
Yeah, sure. I can try a motion if you like, Chair Cray. So I move to adopt a resolution, a reference attachment 1, approving a site and architectural review permit, variance and parking modification permit to allow construction of an approximately 8,200 square foot industrial building with a 0 side setback and a reduction in the number of required parking stalls. And with the condition that either a bike storage or multiple bike rack is installed. And then the second one, adopt a resolution reference attachment 2, approving a tree removal permit to allow removal of on-site protected trees.
Okay, and a second on that?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ostrowski. Corinne, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioners Bookbinder,
Aye.
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 Rivlin,
Aye.
Sir,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ostrowski,
Aye.
and Chair Cray.
Aye. So that
0.
motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much and good luck with your tree planting and your project.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much for your
Appreciate
time.
it.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
I'm going to say this item is final
There you
unless appealed in writing to the city clerk within 10 calendar days. And this item is now done.
Mind if I take about 30 seconds to reconnect through my phone,
Sure.
given that I could be dropping off and back on?
Sure, we'll take a 1-minute break.
All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, so we'll reconvene after our quick break for our second and only other item on our agenda is item number 2. It's a study session. Study session to consider a preliminary application PLN 2020-139 for a planned development rezoning to allow construction of 5 townhomes on a high-density residential property located at 523 Union Avenue. And once again, our planner is Daniel Fama. Daniel?
Thank you. Let me share my screen again. All right, so this is a study session for a preliminary application review for a 5-unit townhome plan development at 523 Union Avenue. This is a voluntary preliminary application, not required by the city zoning code. The applicant is simply seeking planning commission direction on this proposed project. So the project site is located along Union Avenue south of West Valley Drive. It's an approximately 11,000 square foot property, currently improved with a 1950s era single family home. It is within the R3 multifamily residential zoning district and the high density residential general plan land use district. It borders industrial uses to the south and the west and residential uses to the north. And the city boundary with San Jose is located across the street, across Union to the east. There's a brief discussion on density. So there is some potential inconsistency between the zoning code and general plan. And this is actually what the desk item letter from the YIMBY group touched upon that was provided to you earlier today. So the general plan density range for high density residential is 21 to 27 units per gross acre. Gross encompasses the actual legal property plus half of the street directly adjacent in front of the property. That's how the current general plan calculates density. So effectively, the general plan creates a minimum and maximum number of units based on that density range. So based on that range, the project would need to provide at least 7 units, and that would result at 22.8 units per gross acre, up to 8 units, that would hit 26 units per gross acre. However, there could be some inconsistency with the zoning code, which has its own unit limitation that historically has been applied to net lot size. Now, using that formula, that would only allow 5 units, and that creates an inconsistency with the general plan. So there's a couple different ways to look at this. One can see that perhaps the city has historically misapplied the zoning code number to apply to net. Maybe it should apply to gross, in which case the zoning code would allow up to 8 units. Alternatively, if there is any inconsistency, there needs to be some resolution of which prevails, the general plan or the zoning code. And since the zoning code implements the general plan would prevail. So either way, the project has too few units, and minimally we'll need to have up to 7 or a maximum of 8. So you're looking at an addition of 2 to 3 units beyond what is currently depicted. So with the site configuration, we have 4 attached units located to the south, 1 detached unit that would be ADA accessible to the north with a drop aisle going down the middle. This would provide access to carports that are located within the lower level of the townhomes, as well as carports and uncovered parking spaces. Obviously, if the project needs to incorporate 2 or 3 additional units, the site configuration will need to be modified potentially significantly. To what extent is really going to be a greater discussion with the architect. However, there is an argument that the addition of this many units may render a townhome project not necessarily most feasible or ideal type of product type for a residential project. That perhaps they should be looking towards more of a single structure condominium building that could better use the site and provide a better buffer from adjacent land uses and somewhat incorporate the parking within it, as noted in the staff report. Additionally, a addition of 2 or 3 additional units likely will have an impact on the ability of the site to accommodate full code compliant parking. So there may be some consideration in the future for the Plan Commission to recommend approval to the City Council of a reduced parking standard for a future project. In terms of architectural design, the city does not have any design guidelines for residential projects of this type in this area, but the general plan does encourage high quality and creative designs. But what's shown is rather on the simple side, and given the context where you don't have a very established architectural rhythm, it's not within a historic neighborhood, this is a pretty ideal site to be a bit more creative than you could in other locations. Additionally, just in terms of orientation to the street, the general plan does strongly encourage buildings to activate the public street, even residential buildings. And so in this case, you just have the side wall. Generally, this is somewhat problematic. Buildings should generally face the street, or if they don't necessarily literally face the street, they can be designed so that the side wall at least appears to be a front. So just to provide some discussion points for the commission, we did identify various photographs of townhome projects and a couple of podium style projects in the Pacific Northwest, just to get some sense from the commission of the type of architectural design that the applicant should be pursuing if the commission believes that a different type of design is warranted. In terms of affordable housing production, the city's inclusionary housing ordinance only applies to projects with 10 or more units. Since this project, even with 8, would be, of course, below 10, there is no affordable housing requirement by code. However, a density bonus could be sought, A 35% density bonus could increase the maximum unit count from 8 to 11 in exchange for 1 BMR unit. That would be 11% of the 8% units. Do note that unfortunately in the staff report, I incorrectly indicated that this would generate 2 BMR units. That's incorrect. What you would get effectively is an increase of 3 units for the project going from 8 to 11 in exchange for one of those units being a very low income unit. So some of the discussion points for the commission, density, confirming that the project does need to incorporate 7 to 8 units. With regard to affordable housing, does the planning commission want to encourage the applicant to pursue a density bonus request? In terms of site configuration, does the commission believe that townhomes are the appropriate housing type, even if they get significantly smaller, to provide a minimum of 7 units? Or should the applicant pursue a different type of design, more of a single building, apartment building, or condominium building? To what extent is the commission supporting of a parking reduction if necessary? And then lastly, just in terms of architectural design, if any of the images that staff provided, if those provide any a basis for further design revisions that the applicant should consider. And with that, I will take any questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel?
I have a question based on the desk item. One of the things that came up there, I'm a bit confused about. In the packet, it says that you need a plan development zoning change in order to build townhouses, that townhouses are not allowed in R3. Is that correct?
Correct, because the R3 has a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet, which is much larger than the footprint of a townhome.
Okay. Because the letter we got from the YIMBY people mentions that we can't require a rezoning for something that's compliant with the general plan density requirements.
I think I'll defer that particular question to our city attorney. Bill, do you want to opine on that?
This is a matter of first blush. I didn't have the letter in front of me. We cannot require rezoning. No, I don't know that that's true, actually, because zoning is really in the legislative discretion of the city. The city could rezone the property even without consent of the property owner at any time prior to development.
I think, well, here they quote the code 65589.5 saying, for purposes of this section, a proposed housing development project is not inconsistent with the applicable zoning standards and criteria and shall not require a rezoning if the housing development project is consistent with the objective general plan standards and criteria, but the zoning for the project site is inconsistent with the general plan.
Okay.
I can, my apologies. I can forward you the letter if you want to take a look at it and follow up in a moment.
We can come
back to this.
I think if I can add to that, I think what the YIMBY, the person who wrote that, is confusing this notion of why the city requires a rezoning for a PD. A lot of cities won't require that, but we have a PD zone district that needs to be established under certain parameters, and this one does. It doesn't change the density. The land use density is what prevails. The zoning is what implements the land use density. And what Daniel had pointed out in the staff report is there's an inconsistency. You have to change the zoning because the parcels you're creating are smaller. The footprints are smaller than the minimum. That's why it needs to be changed, not because the general plan and the zoning are inconsistent.
Now, arguably, too, they could also use a density bonus request to seek a concession or waiver to the minimum lot size to still achieve townhomes without having going through the rezoning process.
Okay, this is all somewhat. This is somewhat new to me, but I thought the whole issue here was that the that the zoning code is inconsistent with the general plan. That, like, for example, I think I worked this out, a 6,000 square foot lot with one unit on it comes out to 7.26 dwelling units per acre, which is like, it absolutely does not, you cannot build consistent with the general plan on a 6,000 square foot lot in an R3 zone.
Yes, I mean, there most certainly is longstanding issues with the zoning code as it relates to the general plan and the area of density. In the past, the city was not as strictly interpretive of the density range being a minimum and maximum. So I believe there are probably a handful of examples in the past where someone actually did effectively build less than the density range, but that's not how we interpret it and apply it today. And that is one of the many reasons we are updating the zoning code to deal with these types of issues.
This is separate from our objective standards thing, though. Is this part of the, is fixing this part of the general plan update, or what is this? Is there a plan to fix this?
Well, let me just provide another example. If they were proposing an apartment project, no subdivision, there would not have to be a rezoning.
Yes.
That because they're creating a fee simple lot that are smaller than the minimum, that's where the rezoning comes in. At the end of the day, the project needs to comply with the density as prescribed in the general plan. That's the focus. So what type of product should they be designing to achieve that goal?
Okay, I guess the concern seems to be, I think there's a lot of emphasis on from the state on providing ministerial or less discretionary approvals. You see it in the objective standards, you see it in SB 35 approvals, this sort of thing. And as I understand it, like a PD rezoning is something that has to come before us. It's not something that's done ministerially, right?
Correct. It is a discretionary action. And there are a lot of legacy issues in the city's zoning code, such as this.
Okay. I guess I'll put it down here, but I do want to ask, like, what is the plan for fixing this? Because like I had no idea this was an issue. I'm guessing it doesn't come up that often, but it probably will more, especially as we move into the next RENA cycle and everything. Is addressing this part of our objective standards work? Is it part of the general plan update?
It would be part of the general plan update. So as you know, first we need to understand where the draft general plan is going. If this is a document that council is okay to adopt. Once the general plan is adopted, then we'll begin work on the zoning, and of course, staff will do their best to make certain the zoning provisions and the designations are in sync with the land use designations. And so that's somehow this one kind of fell through, but we'll correct it with the new.
Okay, and this isn't like the, so in your view, this isn't like the problem we've had with objective standards where like it's an active and ongoing risk.
This is not objective standards, right?
Okay, so this is not presenting that kind of risk, and so we should fix this when we fix everything else in probably next year-ish.
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question. I have some comments about the project itself, but I think I've monopolized the time. If anybody else wants to talk about that first, by all means.
Well, let me just ask a quick question that just follows up exactly on that, just because I think the YIMBY letter was actually agreeing with the staff's report, but just because this is a workshop, so we're talking, right? So Daniel, this is unusual that we're in a situation where the applicant or the general plan actually calls for more units, and the applicant has proposed fewer units. This is kind of an unusual situation, is it not?
It is a little bit. I mean, and to be fair, I mean, the applicant was trying to follow the R3 standards. I mean, this project very much does track with R3 standards to the greatest extent possible, and that does include the number of units if you just read the plain reading of the R3 standards. But if I recall, Cindy McCormick did have an application that went to the city council maybe 1 or 2 years ago where property is in a high density land use district, and he wanted to build something less than the density range. So he actually sought a general plan amendment or authorization for a general plan amendment to actually effectively downzone the property so he could build fewer units. And that request was denied. So he had to revise the design to build more units.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So the bottom line, first of all, is whether that as townhomes, it can't reside as an R3, so we would need to change it to a planned development. That's number one, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's it.
if they stick with the townhouses and come up with 7 units somehow, okay, then it would the PD would be something that would be required, but the density requirement is either way they got to meet the density requirement.
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, you know, my take on this is that more units is better. Obviously, I don't see how they could possibly get to the 11 unit thing unless you go high, but that doesn't seem practical. But certainly trying to squeeze in a couple more units would make sense from my perspective to meet the requirements, the density requirements. How they would do that, it's an architectural issue, obviously, but
Commissioner Zisser?
Yes.
Can I just interrupt? So,
sure.
Mr. Chair, if this can be just typical Q&A,
this is just questions for staff.
Then if we can let Mr. Wong do his presentation, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Any questions for staff? Yeah.
No, that's okay. I get it. I'm still learning.
Daniel, I have just one really kind of a obscure almost question, but in your report just now and in your written report, we made a point of speaking about Townhome 5 as ADA compliant. Aren't all the units ADA compliant, or?
No, because they don't have bedrooms or kitchens on the ground floor. The ground floor is effectively just garage.
Oh, okay.
There's no way for you to get upstairs in a wheelchair.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, if not, then we will open up our public hearing, and I know Architect Gordon Wong is here, so if you would like to speak, now is your time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for going over this project with us. We voluntarily wanted to set up the study session because of the conflict with the general plan and how many units. Our staff's biggest concern was when we were designing it was if we were to in fact go more units, we can't comply with the parking. So in that site plan we provided, we showed how it's kind of maxed out, and we don't have room for open space, but we do have a park that's 800 feet away within really good walking distances. There's already an established crosswalk with a light that slows the traffic down. So we thought that what might be a good benefit, as well as a bus stop. Because on another project we worked on with Campbell, I think the bus stop relieves some of the parking requirements. If that be the case, we can easily put in, 2 or 3 more units. They don't necessarily need to be townhomes. We could go the condo or the apartment route. I would suggest that to the client. I just want to make sure I'm not pressing up against the ordinance on parking and open space, was my concern. Daniel, if you can give me some feedback, or any of the commissioners that have dealt with a situation like this, would be really helpful.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the purpose of the meeting. So they'll have their dialogue, Gordon.
Okay.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, related to their comment about the density, what was the reasoning for the selection beyond the parking? Like, this was townhome intently, or you thought about a condominium like over a podium where you could have open parking on the first floor?
So initially, when the owner bought the project, somebody had drawn a set of townhomes, and I think they kind of liked the idea. And it was the assumption that if we were to follow the code with as close as we could, it would reduce the units. But if we have an increase in the units, we definitely do the podium thing and put the units above the podium.
Okay, thanks for the context and history. I'm sure we'll have more thoughts on that, and I'll address some of the process as well later on.
So I've got a similar question. And Daniel, could you put up that image of those Pacific Northwest developments, please, if that's possible? Thank you. So this is really probably just getting it right in my mind. On the lower left, image 4, it shows the parking on the ground floor. So I guess question to you, Gordon, do you see that as a practical style of development?
It's a practical style. The issue is the width of our lot will not allow the tandem parking to work. So if they were to put 2-car stack, they will no longer be able to back out of the unit. So Daniel, you got that site plan? You can kind of, because once we get that to scale, I don't think the car will make it.
Yeah.
So you see how then if you do 2-car tandem, the back out might be questionable of getting a car out.
Yeah, correct. That basically would result in 1 stall per unit.
Right.
Yeah, so if we get the reduction of parking, then we could easily do the 1 stall per unit, but that would require an adjustment in the parking requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
So a question for the applicant. Would you be interested in pursuing a density bonus as described earlier?
Absolutely. Absolutely would.
And the main blocker for you is the parking requirement?
Correct. Yeah,
so,
getting all the parking there. And the open space, because the open space will reduce the footprint quite extensively, but that's what I was saying. There was a park 800 feet away with a crosswalk already installed and a sidewalk's already there.
Okay, that's
Union Avenue.
Stoyanovich, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is, if you had 1 unit per, one required parking space per unit, and you could use the nearby park for open space, how many units would you be able to actually use the density bonus and fit 11 units, 1 subsidized on there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think we could get that in there. That is definitely possible.
Okay.
That's based on one parking space per unit.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and the normal parking requirement, Daniel, is what?
Well, the current parking requirement would be 3 per unit.
Not 2.5.
That's a really high number, right?
Yeah.
And also,
I thought it was 2.5.
It's 2.5 plus a half guest, so for a total of 3.
plus we need space for accessibility because we need that one on the ground floor and the accessible walk aisle and the trash enclosure. Now, if we reduce to 1, we can include the trash inside the garage, and I think we'd have enough space to fit 11, actually.
Hey, Daniel?
Yeah.
Can you pull up the floor plan?
You have to give me 1 minute.
While you're doing that for the applicant, that is not considering an open podium floor, is it? Or it is?
The example on the lower left that was being shown was not a podium. That was a 1-car garage.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Oh, we're still talking about garages, but
I could go either way, but I would say even with a garage without a podium, we could probably fit 11 in there. No problem.
It's just seeing 8 on one side. Obviously you need structure and probably a elevator of some kind. You could at least get 15 if not squeeze a 16th in there. But yeah, I get it. There's some needs to be done.
So Commissioner Rivlin, that's what I wanted to get at. I wanted to show, I'm looking at potentially 24 parking stalls. So if we could, you're almost there, Daniel.
What are we looking at right now? Oh, here it comes. Okay.
Yeah, these are the ground floor plan of the townhomes.
Can you go to sheet A002?
A002.
Yeah, I was looking at the one on the left. That guy there.
There you go. So so the parking stalls on the right there, there's what, 6 of them. And if you assume you can double that up, that's 12 on each side. There's 24. You'll probably miss one because of garbage and elevator and that, or stairs. But if you can kind of visualize that, if that whole bottom was parking and then up above you had your units, then you got something. You can even have a courtyard with open space in the middle, something to that effect.
But I'd be happy to do that.
So what you're saying, Paul, is you could have 12 homes with 24 parking spaces?
Well, I don't know how many units, but what I'm saying is you can probably get about 23, 22 stalls down that bottom floor and still have utilities, amenities to gain access and collect garbage. Then it's just a matter of doing the numbers, and if they're off on the parking, to what degree, and can that degree be offset, right, by some improvement?
And I guess there would be some space, again, bicycle racks, to put some bicycle racks in there, or electric scooter charging if we're reducing the parking requirement.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll also add that if I remember right, I don't think there's any on-street parking in that section of Union.
There is.
Yeah, there's definitely not.
So Paul, I like your idea of maximizing the parking on the property as much as possible.
I'll say for my part, I feel ambivalent about that. Like, I recognize the things that we're worried about, but at the same time, like, the more, like, the design as we're seeing it right now, 1/3 of it is a driveway, and of the remainder, about half of it is a parking lot. There's very little open space, and this is actually fewer homes and fewer units than we could max out on it. And like, I understand that we don't want parking overflow, and we're concerned about that. But given that, like, we are sacrificing quite a bit to make space for cars, as opposed to, like, space the cars live in is not really, it's kind of a non-space. It's not something you do anything with, it's just sort of a tax you pay. And to the extent that we can minimize that, the
Paul
better.
was suggesting to build the apartments or living structures above the parking on both sides.
Commissioner Bookbinder, we would depress or falsely depress the parking and build a podium structure that was invisible from.
Are we in the public session, or are we in the? I've forgotten. Are we in the public session?
We're going all over.
We need to get that. Yeah, we need to.
We still got the public session open, but that's fine. We can still do questions and stuff.
Well, what I can probably try to do is do that podium parking. I definitely will hit the threshold of 24, no problem. And possibly in the back, where we're going to put the open space, put some visitor parking back there to try to prevent any overflow onto Union Avenue. And the goal would be to get to 11 units if possible. Maybe we'll hit 10, maybe we'll get to 11. But I think if I present that to the owner, they'll be pretty happy to give my team the shot to do it. And I think our office's track record shows that we can handle a project and get that density up to the level that matches the general plan. And we would definitely go for that 35% density bonus with the low income for that one unit. If we can get the relaxed parking requirement, we'll get the bike racks and the scooter charge. I used to live on Apricot and ride a scooter to my office, so I kind of understand that culture. But I moved on from that part of my life about 5 years ago, but I do remember doing that. But we can propose that.
Mr. Wong, is there a height? You're okay with the height limit? You don't have to-
Yeah, we can do the 3 stories. I'll set up a roof configuration that should accent towards the street, and the rest of it, I'll run some gables and figure out how to get the roof to work out.
Could somebody explain to me what the open space requirement is for this kind of?
300 per.
So the current, if it were rezoned to PD, there's no technical open space requirement unless it becomes condominiums, but currently under the R3 zoning is 300 square feet per unit. And this design actually does show small little patios behind these townhomes, but more or less satisfies that number.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Very narrow.
Okay, so the little playground area or whatever it is not what we're talking about.
Correct.
You can use all the patios as open space. Okay.
Correct.
But if the parking, we can get into this after the public open session, but Commissioner Zisser, the parking central core would disappear and there'd be more flexibility. Not that that would all remain open, but there'd be more space to work with if the parking was submerged or below deck, as it were. Maybe this can be converted into a question for the applicant. Do you think you'd want to would you be able to leverage some of the flexibility of the podium into open space to, afford the new configuration, more open space for the residents, the tenants?
I think that would be actually quite difficult, because if we do that, then we will not be able to make the 11 units. My assumption was to put the open space behind in the back. However, that would still be not enough open space, in my opinion. We would still be at a reduction. Because we're talking 3,300 square feet of open space, and the lot is only about 80 feet by 142 depth, right? So it's not going to be enough.
If you were to, Mr. Wong, if you were to add your private roof decks to each unit, what could you achieve it that way?
It's the balconies could possibly, because if let's say I make a group open space in the back, I could absorb probably something like, because we're trying to get a little bit of parking in there, I would say about 2,000. So I'd be short 1,300. I don't think we'll get, I don't think we'll make that number, but we'll get pretty close. We'll probably get like 2,800, something like that.
So if you were to take the same layout, let's say this is your top plate of the podium, you have 4 townhomes on the side, on the left side. Could you make those narrower and have 5 on one side, 5 on the other, and then have a big swath of open space down the middle with a little fountain in the middle and benches and roof decks?
You could, yeah. You hypothetically could.
Sure.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of creativity here with this space.
That's assuming we can have the parking reduction, right? Because then it would be doable. Because if I add 3 more units, that's talking like something like another 10 stalls of parking. If I get that parking reduction, that can be done, and then we could probably achieve that 3,000 something. Yeah, that could be done.
Yeah, if I can clarify, just in terms of parking. So if they do seek a density bonus, the density bonus ordinance actually does provide for a lesser parking standard for, in this case, 2 stalls per unit.
Then you would need your 22. So if you had 11 units, you would only need 22 parking stalls.
Great.
Is that correct, Daniel?
That's correct.
So that's applicable by going for that density bonus.
Yeah, right. Then you would podium, and then everyone have that'd be pretty cool. I think that's a great idea. I'll brainstorm with the team. We'll work with the client and bring back that idea to the table on the next submittal. And at that point, I think we're going to really submit the project and start working with planning to put the project in the ground. I can see it's very feasible to do this that way. So we'll put the open space in between the townhomes and compress the towns to get 5 on each side, maybe even 11 if we can get that 1 parking per unit set up, and I can reduce the size of the townhome. But I think that's a very exciting project, and we can get like a fountain or something in the middle. that would bring a good open space together.
So just a question for context. What exactly is podium parking?
So that's when like the parking's on the ground floor, and then you put like a lid on the top. So that's practically where the new ground floor is. So it's like almost underneath. So that way we could use the podium. It's like you're pretty much putting your units on a podium, and the group open space can go on that podium too.
Okay, so you wouldn't, so the aerial view wouldn't look like you had that 2-lane road in the middle. That would be underneath.
Correct. It'd be
you would have
underneath
the
that
fountain on
podium.
top. Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
That would be much more aesthetic.
Yeah.
You're essentially saying you'd have a ground level parking garage, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's what I thought.
And that does present its own architectural challenges, because then how that appears in the street will need to be a significant consideration.
The stairs on the bottom too. We can have two sets of stairs and one elevator.
Planner Fama, does this area is fairly close to those groundwater recharge areas, and I don't know too much about those, but would they be able to excavate at any depth, or that those groundwater recharge areas preclude this from doing any sunken parking?
Yeah, we certainly have projects that have had subterranean parking, but subterranean parking is, I think, economically very challenging, particularly at a limited scale.
But the applicant believes that it would work here.
Well, this is, Commissioner Bookbinder, I believe what they're proposing is just parking on grade, but building a box over the parking that would fit into the architecture of the units. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, I think, yeah, when you're describing a podium, in most cases, you're talking about ground floor parking that then the residential units sit on top of. So as Commissioner Zizzer mentioned, effectively a parking garage, a ground floor with units on top, which can work, but you need to then make sure that how it interfaces with the street is very carefully done. You wouldn't want just the edge of a parking garage facing the street.
Daniel, just to give you a quick run by on this, let's say we do all this, material. The first thing I'm going to look at is, can the stormwater be treated properly to get it out in the street if we start covering the whole lot? Yeah. The stormwater treatment will be the next big thing, and that's looks like it's gonna be in the front setback, and it looks too small in my opinion. Does Campbell allow like mechanically treated water, like to put a basin into the ground?
That gets more into our engineering division. I know there are exemptions for certain types of infill projects, but I believe that's usually more proximity to public transit. But that'll need further discussion with Roger, Public Works.
I think it might be worth at least asking before pursuing this project, because it would be quite expensive to put these massive set of plans together and find out, oh, the stormwater isn't allowed to be mechanically treated, because I don't think it wouldn't make natural treatment given the size of the lot. Would you be able to connect me with him so I can just give a pass over on that and ask?
Yeah.
One more question is on the FAR. We're already maxed out on the floor area ratio. Will that be something that, because we're going for the density bonus, it doesn't matter? Or because by zoning we're over the FAR, but by general plan we're okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the property needs to be most likely rezoned to planned development, so the FAR is really no longer a strict limitation.
Okay, we understand. Yeah, I think the session is going to be positive news for the client. I appreciate everyone's time, and it gave me a lot of good ideas. So I'll bring a pretty interesting project back to the table.
Okay. I have some more comments. I think we may also still have some more comments to keep you here for a bit longer.
Sure. We want to go back to, do we want to go back to just doing comments?
Well, yeah, I guess we can, unless there's any more questions for Mr. Wong, we can close the public hearing and just bring it back to the commission for our.
Chair Cray, I don't know if there were any other members of the public.
Are there anybody else to speak on item number 2? I don't see anybody there. So I think that's, anybody to speak on item number 2, now's the time. Going once, twice. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to commission for our comments. Final comments. Anybody starting us off?
I can start us off. Daniel, I believe Daniel put together the packet and was kind enough to list a number of things that they wanted us to comment on. So in terms of density, I think we covered that. I just wanted to note that the next arena cycle is really going to push us a lot more than been pushed before. And so anything we can do, as Commissioner Zisser said, more units is better, obviously. Also, I want to note, like, this is the highest density general plan designation in the whole city. We have very little of this land, and I have the sense that we should really make the most of it. And the idea that we could have a subsidized unit on this land is very exciting, along with fitting 11 units in a place that is, you know, conveniently located to park. It has a reasonable walk score and bike score. The main concern I had about the original layout is that it doesn't look very, it's not very nice facing the street. It's not exactly oriented towards the street. In terms of design, I like the articulation. I like the peaked roofs. I think they're pretty. I would absolutely endorse roof decks and balconies. I think those are wonderful amenities. And in terms of parking, I am very happy to reduce the parking standard requirement there. I think it works out well that the density bonus allows us to do that, or allows the applicant to do that. But if I am comfortable with doing that. And just in terms of making a comment, I feel a bit embarrassed that people here brought us a proposal where they did their best to comply with the rules as written in good faith, and it turns out that that doesn't actually make you a project. I appreciate the time and energy that the applicants brought, and I hope that we can fix this up so that we don't put more people in the same position. And lastly, did the city attorney have a chance to look over the bit where we can't require a rezoning for a general plan compliant development?
Right.
I
did, and the letter was referring to a provision in the Housing Accountability Act. And essentially, if the only reason for requiring the rezoning was because of a discrepancy between the objective requirements of the general plan and the requirements of the zoning code, then yes, we could not force them to do a zone change. I'm not sure that that's all there is to it in this particular project. Also, interestingly, though, I will raise this, the city still has the ability on its own to change the zoning at any time prior to approval of the project. So it may be something of a moot point.
Okay, thank you. That just want to make sure we were on the right side of things there. And those are the comments that I had.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll jump in. I agree with a number of what the Commissioner Buckbinder said, but again, I would have been happy to see them get up to 7 or 8, but if you can get up to 11 and get the affordable housing addition, that would be fantastic. So I would definitely support that. As far as the design goes, I'm not I appreciate a cool looking modern design of some of those pictures that were included, that Daniel put in. But I'm not, architecturally looked fine to me in the first place. So I'm not that, I don't have any strong opinions about that. As far as the orientation to the front, I actually do have a position on that. There's, I realize that the city has this requirement in terms of orienting front units, but if you're familiar with Union Avenue, that's hardly applicable on Union Avenue. I mean, I've actually looked at the whole street going up to Campbell, and there's only 1 or 2 instances because, as we know, Union Avenue is high density apartments and condos. And with the exception of 1 or 2 particular developments, there are no forward-facing units. So it seems to me that, if the street was mostly forward-facing, then I would want to support that, but I don't see the real strong need for orienting something towards Union Avenue just to meet that requirement. And, if there could be a facade or a pseudo look that would accomplish, something that would at least, that we could approve, I'd be fine with the orientation, not necessarily forward. The parking, if we can get down to where it's just two spaces per unit, I don't know about much less than that, a variance, because there is no parking on Union Avenue and the side streets are pretty full up. So I would see potentially an overflow if we gave them a variance on getting below two per unit. So I'd be happy with 2 per unit, but anything less than that would seem problematic to me because of the parking situation on Union Avenue. And that's about all I have to say.
I'll be real quick because Commissioner Zisser just was exactly in line with my thinking on every single one of those items. So
wow,
there you go on that one. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on kind of the design of the project. We talked a lot about this pillar approach to increase the number of units and the availability of parking, which I agree with my fellow commissioners on those items, but I'd like to make sure that we do take into account the design so that, from the street, it doesn't look like something that's just up on stilts in a parking lot down below. Because I think what we want to do as we build out these properties is to create a kind of sense of community. And I think that having those units face the street is important in order to do that. I do recognize that that isn't how Union looks, and most of them are kind of in a similar design that this one came to us, kind of the units facing sort of each other and not really an aesthetic from the street. But I think that by having something that's more appealing, I think that has the impact of slowing down traffic, making it seem like it's less of kind of this thoroughfare cut through type of street. So I think we do want to aim for that. And I think a lot of these streets are hopefully over time going to turn into more walking streets. People are going to be walking and biking more. That's what we're encouraging. That's the result. That's what will happen when we reduce the number of parking units. So I think we really need to be conscientious of what's life going to look like in 20 years and how do we help one project at a time, how do we help get us there? So yeah, hopefully, I know that's a little bit vague, but hopefully that gives you some idea about being creative and not trying to be like, the developments that were done 20, 30 years ago, but what do we want things to look like in the future?
Yeah, I'd agree with the Vice Chair's comments there as well. I like the contemporary design, but if we could do something which is makes it look more welcoming, more like community on the street side, that would be good. I like the community development director's idea of the type of open space running down the centre with a fountain or something in there. I think that would be great. And if we had some bike racks and an electric charging scooter, that'd probably be a good thing as well. But all the other stuff, density bonus, 11 units, car parking reduction, I'm in favour of.
I'll go ahead if you're finished, Commissioner Chin. Daniel, before I give a few comments, what's the max height on this parcel? Or if we zone this PD, it would be up to the city cap?
Correct. So the R3 height max is 40 feet. If it were rezoned to PD, it'd be the citywide 75-foot maximum height.
Okay, and maybe that's not appropriate at this era, given the adjacent units or homes. I know the industrial or the commercial to the south probably wouldn't be affected, but given the character of Union, I don't think there's anything, well, I'm excluding the prune yard, but I don't think anything along Union hits over.
Just give me that 78, man.
I don't think anything on Union is exceeding 40 feet, Daniel, is it?
Probably not. I mean, I think that height standard is pretty consistent out there. A lot of those properties are zoned R3.
So I know I said only one question. One other question. The Penny Lane development has roof deck units with roof deck patios. Is that allowed by code, or that was a special variance or entitlement?
There's nothing that prohibits it. And actually, I think there is some reference to it in some of the zoning chapters. So it's something that's allowable.
So, okay, that's where I'm going to leave with my comments. I think with the idea that this is a compact site and the applicant and, ownership would be potentially amicable to creating this more dense style living and leveraging a podium, I think this might actually afford itself to having roof deck patios or terraces, not exorbitantly large, but something someone could sit and have a coffee. And, I think the views of the South mountain range and just the whole Campbell City and looking north to the prune yard could create some kind of specialty element to your site. I didn't know it was allowed by code, but it seems that it would work and you wouldn't get too much over that 40-foot limit doing both podium and a 2-story unit. And then you could also, I don't know how that applies to the open space requirement, but maybe it also would help you in that sense as well. Architecturally, seeing the photos in the packet, I think, with some hints to that form of architecture. That being said, we aren't Seattle, so I think making it distinctly Campbell would benefit, tying into elements along Union, not that that's, architecture row, but bringing in the character of the community or even the prune yard, which isn't too far away. And then I think the benefit of this site is you do have local parks. You have the small community park on Union, and then Edith Morley isn't too far away for people who want that active lifestyle or do some jogging or walk, path walking. So I think we worked through the parking. Seems like if we had 11 units with the density bonus, the applicant would be able to leverage 22 stalls, which seems mathematically realistic. Even with a drive aisle, not sure how trash fits in there, but I'm sure there's a creative method to that. Architecture covered that. I think with you said your track record, and I looked at your website while we're speaking. I think you have the ability to really leverage this, project into something creative and kind of, new paradigm setting for this street and this density. So I'm supportive of your future designs and look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Anybody else, or I think we got a lot of info, got a lot done.
Just gotta say, we really, really like working with Campbell. It's just the best place to be. I mean, we live here, we work here, our office is here. Our office is like a block away from this site, and I go to the farmer's market. I walk that Union walk all the time. But yeah, Campbell's been a really good city to run a business in and work with everybody. So just want to express some appreciation for what you guys do.
We're glad you're here as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wish you luck on the project.
Daniel, are there any trees on this site that cause any issues for removal?
Don't believe so. No, there are really no trees, maybe a couple of shrub trees in the very back, but the site's mostly pavement and building.
And I was remiss, I forgot one thing, and I think Vice Chair mentioned it. Make sure that that street frontage really ties in and not that stilt or, concrete block wall with some vines on it. That would detract from the view or the feel of Union, which is fairly residential and kind of, tight knit. We wouldn't want, I know just south of your lot is an industrial type building, but I'd rather you didn't tie into that architecture and you really went with the more, community building.
It's going to look good. I bring it back looking really good.
All right.
I'm so motivated. I'm going to get to work.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I see you sketching away right now.
Yeah. I love doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And so that's item number 2. So Director Kamoyan, do you have a report for us?
So it's, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, it's not in the director's report. But the next Planning Commission meeting is in the director's report. It's January 12th. At that meeting, we will do the ceremonial handing over the gavel, and you'll be appointing the next chair and vice chair.
Very good.
So
Anything
we'll have
else?
to figure that out. How do we do that virtually?
Well, we'll through the-
I
have one quick question is, what's going on with Cressley? Is there any movement on that project?
Yeah, so they are actually working with staff, dealing with a number of technical issues. They are preparing their construction drawings, and last we heard, they're looking to submit for a building permit in the early springtime.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when we were preparing our budget, we spoke with them early on, and they really were going to be submitting construction plans like by September. But there's certain things that are happening obviously with the pandemic, so there's a slight delay. It's certainly not on staff's issue. It's their side.
Crazy year.
Indeed.
Thanks.
I have two things I just want to mention. First, thank you everybody for appointing me to the Commission Collaborative. We are finally meeting with the mayor next Monday. I will, to the extent that is important, I will report back. If anybody has anything that they want me to bring, is it okay for me to ask if anybody has anything they want me to bring to the mayor's attention or bring up?
So Commissioner Bookbinder, I think, thank you for alerting us. We'll go ahead and just put that on the in the director's report, or you can give a kind of a debrief on planning.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I'll take notes. One other thing I wanted to mention, I had asked last time when we're planning on doing our general plan update. I realized that we have two major projects, the objective standards and the general plan update. Sorry, I'd asked when we're doing our housing element update, and we're planning on starting around January of 2022, I think you said. I just wanted to note that other cities like Lafayette are starting site selection. I know the numbers aren't final or anything, but given that this is going to be way more strenuous than past cycles and therefore more contentious, maybe we should do that too. And I wanted to ask if we were getting LEAP funding, because the deadline to apply for that is the end of January.
Yeah, we've already received approval for LEAP funds, so that, yeah, we're ahead of the game there. In terms of site selection, yeah, we're all on the same pace. A site selection, opportunity site selection tool was recently distributed to all the cities. So there truly is a regional collaboration going on housing element preparation. I think the question that we're going to need to ask ourselves is, do we hire our own consultant, or do we hire a consultant that others are using? So there's some pros and cons with that. We'll just have to weigh that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Is it okay if I ask the other commissioners if there's anything specifically that they want me to bring up at the Commission Collaborative?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want me to bring up?
Just the general plan. How can we progress it? How can we unstick it?
Yeah, I think the big one, Commissioner Bookbinder, is, when the commissioners identify a problem, let's say a problem, how do you advance that to the council?
Okay, because I have a whole list of things that I do have a list. I think there's like 15 things on it.
That was good big picture, Paul.
All right, I will make sure to bring that up.
You've got a lot to think about it.
Commissioner Bookbinder, my thought was you have been the most vocal with these elements. So obviously you were the most apropos to sit at this council or this little circle with the city council. But you know, I think going through those and prioritizing them, the general plan was most important. And then just really, you know, parking is an ongoing issue that you'd mentioned multiple times. And then I'd just like to see if it is on the radar of city council, but the Dell area, we really struggled 6 months ago, or maybe it was longer. But when we, you know, looked at that development and we had a different direction based on the general plan, and then the, you know, city council had a different perspective, and really how do we align with their view? But then just the Dell area in itself needed its own thorough discussion. So I think you'll have plenty of topics, but those are some on my radar.
Okay, you're saying we suffered from the lack of an area plan because we kind of had to go in our own direction, and it was not the direction that city council was imagining. And if we had an area plan, that wouldn't be a problem.
Correct, and there's history there, and maybe sync with Director Kermoyan on that history, because there was an attempt at an area plan, but yeah, definitely worth considering or understanding what the city council's viewpoint on that area as well as others in the city are.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I'll just say, since I'm new, I don't know what's on your list of 15, but if affordable housing is on the list, that would be good in terms of if there's any interest on the council to pursue it more beyond what we're doing now in terms of things to boost the affordable housing in Campbell. So that's my hot button.
Okay, I'll bring up how do we get more affordable housing. Yeah, the list of things that I'm bringing up tend to be very, very specific, just for a, just to pick one for an example, our in lieu fees aren't adjusted for inflation, and we're set in 2006, which means there's an incentive heavily tilted towards paying the fees rather than doing on-site affordable units, which we saw with the East Mozart development.
I would say the other thing, and I didn't mention it because I'm sure you'll bring it up, but I think a lot of cities do it. We should have a joint planning commission city council meeting every year, kind of at the beginning, probably at the beginning of the year when you're kind of setting priorities for the year, just to kind of get on the same page. We talked about that a few times, and I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that we should be doing. So,
okay, I'll bring that up.
If there's nothing else, let's adjourn. Let's adjourn the December 8th meeting of the Campbell Planning Commission, and until our next meeting, which is now planned for January 12th, 2021. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy Christmas.
See you next year.
See you next year.
Stay safe.
Happy Hanukkah.